Yeah. Hello.
What's up,
Oh,
everyone?
hey everyone. We got a birthday too. This is Schema / UA's birthday party. Let's see
Someday.
everyone's wonderful faces. Turn your camera on. Yay.
Hello, hello. Look at this. This is a full house.
We
It's a
got quite
full
the
virtual
crew.
house.
This is exactly what you wanted on your birthday, right?
It is. This
UA
is
did
this
UA
is
did
way
message
more.
us. She did message us this morning saying, I'm actually quite excited for Schema's workshop tonight, not gonna lie. So
Who wouldn't be? Best birthday gift ever. Learning about yourself.
awesome. Well, we
Hello.
we have such a good night in store for everyone. So thank you all for making the time to be here.
Yes, absolutely. And it is so lovely to see your faces. Some of you we have not seen at these events yet. So it's really nice to put a face with the name. And some of you are just regulars. You're like that person that goes to the same bar. It's like cheers, right? We're like, hey, welcome back, welcome back. This is our monthly sounding board event. And as always, we're always excited for these events because they're an opportunity for us to connect and also just to learn about each other, to learn about ourselves, and to get through some breakthroughs in our lives. And I think this one in particular is one of those breakthrough events where if you don't know much about schemas, this will be mind blowing for you. And if you do know anything about schemas, this is just that next step to learn more about yourself. So, before we get this event started, just some housekeeping. Please keep yourself on mute until we ask you to unmute yourself. And please keep your camera on if you can. We love seeing your faces. And as the event goes on, especially if you're new, you'll see that it gets very interactive and sometimes it gets
Mhm.
a little hot and crazy too. So it's good to have your camera on for that.
And the chat is always lit. So make sure to write in the chat. We're going to have some prompts and such, but feel free to comment with any revelation that you're having throughout. We're also going to have a chance to do breakout sessions too. So people will kind of get more like one-on-one interaction or small group interaction with each other. And of course, we're going to have the chance to ask Dr. Lev anything, but she's going to take us through this amazing exercise. And Yue and Louise and I did it as like the run through, and literally our minds were blown. So we're super excited about this for you guys.
Thank you for this reminder, Louise. Make sure you have a pen and paper nearby. I know some of us like to do note taking via computer or our phones. Let's go analog tonight because we've been told by Dr. Lev that these exercises will be better if you have a pen and paper instead of
Mhm.
something electronic. And also, if you do have any questions along the way, and sometimes we don't want to interrupt the event for questions, we will have a time at the end for that. But if there are questions along the way and you feel like it needs to be asked in that moment, you can always DM me or Julie through the
Mhm.
chat, and then we'll find the right time to insert that question,
Yep.
or just write it down and save it for the Q&A later.
Yes. Awesome. So, shall we get into it? Shall we intro Dr. Lev and get her up here with us?
Season 11, episode 18. How we're wired for relationships. I got that right. Yeah. Season 11, episode 18. How You're Wired for Relationships was one of our most popular episodes of that season, if not
Mhm.
for our entire 11 seasons of Dateable, because Schemas is another level of personality test that's just not basic. It doesn't just scratch the surface, it goes way deep into how you're innately wired to understand, digest, and interpret information, which in turn affects the way you behave. So we have Dr. Lev back again for this workshop. She's a psychotherapist, mediator, author, and executive coach in San Francisco. She's a director of the Bay Area CBT Center, a clinic that specializes in cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, to help individuals and couples break unhelpful patterns, develop healthier habits, and improve all areas of life. She has co authored 3 books on relationships. Acceptance and commitment therapy for couples is one, acceptance and commitment therapy for interpersonal problems, and 3, the interpersonal problems work interpersonal problems workbook. She has presented her research at regional and international conferences. She's also the founder of cbtonline.com. And we've made this joke before, but don't go to cbdonline.com unless if you need some edibles tonight. But cbtonline.com.
Slightly different thing.
Slightly different, but may have similar results. I don't know. It's an online platform that connects people with online therapists who specialize in CBT and offers online CBT resources such as webinars, e-courses, videos, etc. Dr. Lev utilizes evidence-based practices, including CBT, ACT, which is acceptance and commitment therapy. I know we're throwing a lot of words at you, and schema therapy, which is what we want to talk about today. So for purposes of this workshop, Dr. Lev has agreed for us to call her Abby, just so we make it a little bit
Keep it less formal. Yeah.
Too much Dr. Lev already.
So here is Abby. Hello.
Hey, Abby.
Hey, happy birthday.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yes. Love turning 21 again. For the 20th time.
21
I
times
thought
2,
you were
maybe.
20.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us again, because if you listen to this episode, I actually met Abby like 3 or 4 years ago when I was going through couples therapy with my now ex. And so our paths crossed again when we did that episode for season 11, and now for the third time for this workshop. So it's lovely seeing you and having you back and to blow our minds, basically. That's what we're here to do.
That was so serendipitous. That's still that moment.
I still
Still
can't
blows
believe
my
it.
mind away.
All right. Shall we get into the first exercise?
Let's do it. So you all know this. Well, the people, I shouldn't say you all know. All the people that have been here have played with this annotate tool. Louise, the Zoom mastermind behind the scenes. So let's give it up for Louise before we start too.
Woo, woo,
So
Louise, yes.
we do have some. Should we throw up the instructions of how to use the annotate tool? But we want to get a feel of what are everyone's schemas. So pretty much by now, we're assuming most of you have taken the quiz. If not, then no fair, but most of you have. So to find the annotate tool on Zoom, essentially it could be at the very top under the view options, or it could be on your bottom bar. So kind of if anyone's having issues, kind of write in the chat that you're can't find it. And if not, we'll move on to the exercise. But basically, this is going to give you an opportunity to draw on the screen. Who knew that you could do that with Zoom? Okay.
Magic.
So we're going to, Eddie, last call for anyone that cannot find the annotate tool.
Oh, I just put a heart there.
Okay. So yeah, you can do the annotate tool. You basically can grab the pen. Or if you want to do a heart, you could also do a heart. That's fine too. A marker, that works.
I'm a big
Whatever
fan of
you
heart.
desire. Is that just UA doing that?
Yeah,
it is. Okay, it looks like mobile does not have annotate.
It does actually. If you look on, well, everyone's a little different. If you look under, shoot.
Oh, found it. Looks
Oh,
like
great.
Jason found, or
Ryan did.
Ryan, someone found it. Great. It's a pen.
It's on the pen
side.
side. Yes, yes, yes.
Awesome.
Anybody
Okay,
else
last
having
call.
issues?
Last call for issues with annotate. Okay, I see more hearts coming on, so that's a good sign.
Oh, good. And a star.
Okay.
Oh, a big heart.
Awesome. So let's move to the next slide then, and we'll let Abby take over since she is the schemas expert. But we're basically going to have you mark which are your top. Let's do top 3, Abby, or what do you think?
Top 3, yeah.
Top three schemas. Let's see what everyone is in the group.
Oh,
I love that there's a heart on it. That's great.
You gotta do the
schemas.
heart. You gotta do the heart. Okay, we'll get some focus music here.
There we go.
A lot of perfectionism. That is the top schema, usually.
Not surprised by that at all. There we go.
People have strong feelings about the defectiveness. Shame one.
How do you really feel?
There's so many trusting people in this group I see. Not a lot of mistrust abuse.
Oh, I love Ryan's comment. Oh, we've had many penises drawn in previous events. I'm actually surprised. There's been 0 penises so far drawn.
Wow, we got a lot of perfectionism.
Mm-hmm.
I can identify with that one.
Yes, me
Actually,
too.
across the board, we don't have much dependence or mistrust. Those are our two ones that have nothing next to them.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That is interesting.
Subjugation, is that like one big mark? I see like one that's just taking
Yeah.
up the whole space.
Is that like all encompassing?
Someone's like, that's me. I feel it.
Oh, Avigail, mistrust is my 4th. That makes
Wow.
sense. Maybe it's not in your top 3. Uh-huh.
I want to make sure as I talk about the schemas, because I already did the podcast, that I give opportunities for people to ask questions. So I want to make sure that if anybody has any questions, please feel free to do that in whatever way it happens here. But one thing I wanted to really articulate is that these schemas are not like, they're not facts about ourselves, and they're also not behaviors in relationships, right? So they are just beliefs. So we develop these core beliefs in early childhood. And then as adults, we have these lenses. They're like sunglasses, and this is how we view the world and other people. And we predict that this is how we're going to be treated in relationships. But what's important is that none of these it's not a personality test, and it's not facts. It's just your ideas about yourself and others in relationships. And if we go to the next slide, we'll see that in the next slide, there's a list of schema coping behaviors. And what's interesting is that we all do different behaviors. We could have the same schema and do a very different behavior. So for example, if somebody has a dependent schema, even though nobody does, they believe that they're dependent on others, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they behave in a dependent way in relationships, right? They could be excessively autonomous and still have a dependency schema, right? Somebody who has a subjugation schema is a core, right? The fears that you're going to be controlled or disempowered, or like you feel powerless, you feel the sense of pressure or guilt in relationships, kind of engulfment, right? Kind of related to avoidant attachment style. The person who has a subjugation schema, one person could respond to this feeling of helplessness and pressure by kind of submitting to it and just going, yes, 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 right? And subjugating their needs and agreeing to things they don't really want to do. Another person could respond to that same belief by going, nope, nope, being really inflexible and rigid. So what's really important here is that, when I'm working with people on their schemas, we're not trying to change the beliefs, right? When our belief gets triggered, there's certain thoughts, feelings, sensations. It's like a whole experience. We know what it's like when we get triggered in relationships. It's like very intense. But really, what we need to the only thing we do have control over actually is our behaviors. We could have the same exact experience and do something radically different. And I just want to make sure that before I start talking about doing things radically different, whether anybody has any questions or thoughts or anything.
And Abby, I think this is a really good point, because even on our episode, I made the mistake of saying when I took the schemas test again, it came back totally different from the last time I took it when I was in a previous relationship. And when we really looked at the results, it was just the intensity of the schemas were less, but I got the same schemas. So it's really important to note what Abby just said, is that your schemas don't change. It's how your behavior changes as a result of understanding your schemas.
And I loved
Yeah.
also how you said, like, there's nothing wrong with you. Like, this is just like everyone has innate, and there's no schemas that are better or worse than another. And I
Right.
loved also how you said it's actually easier to change our behavior than our thought patterns, like our core beliefs, which is actually really fascinating.
right? And sometimes after a while, when we do different behaviors for a long time, our schemas may shift a bit, right? But it's not because we worked on changing the schemas. It's because we've developed different behaviors and patterns in our relationships that then impact the core beliefs.
I love that. It's changing your default reaction to your schema.
Yeah, your
That's the
knee-jerk
perfect way.
reaction. Yep.
Correct.
Exactly.
Correct. Like Pema Chodron has a term for it. She calls it our propensity, right? We have a certain propensity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I see the chat now. Yes.
The chat is blowing up.
just
Put your
discovered the
stuff in
chat, Abby?
I love it.
I just
love it.
discovered it.
It's like, where are you guys pulling these comments out?
Right.
Making them up on the fly. Good paradigm shift. Exactly. Yeah. Wonderful.
And if we get into the next slide, we could get into values, because what we do is we identify our true values in relationships of what we want to be about, and we help people start, right, basically replacing the coping behaviors with values-based actions, with behaviors that are consistent with a set of values of what we want to be about in relationships.
This is a lot of values. I love it. But this is good. It's getting like, I think the reason why we wanted to put this up on a slide too is to get everyone's like brain moving. So when we actually go through the exercise, you can kind of be aware, like maybe scan this list and like see maybe 4 or 5 words that kind of resonate with you. It's a good way to kind of start putting your headspace around this.
Yeah, maybe grab that pen and paper and just start jotting down some words that pop out at you. I know on our live stream last week, we talked about core values, and that feeds into your everyday life, but these are specific to relationship values. So see if there are like 3 or 4 words that really jump out at you and make a note of it.
Yeah, and you want to have several different values, maybe like 5 or more, because values are like a compass, and they help you decide every behavior that you want to do in a relationship. So every move that you make, you ask yourself, am I moving closer towards a set of values, or am I moving further away? Like, it's very easy to just be assertive, but are you being assertive and also kind and also compassionate, right? Or it's very easy to be compassionate, but are you being assertive, right? And consistent and honest, right? So you want to have a set of values and every behavior, and we're going to do a little exercise in a bit to help people really identify that. But also, it's important to be thinking about your own values, what kind of partner you want to be in relationships, and being consistent with that. And then also, you want to be thinking about, when you're going out on dates, about, is the person that you're going out on a date with, are they being consistent with these values? Because I often find that when people are dating, they look for certain qualities in a partner that are actually pretty easy to change, right? Like, for example, I want my partner to have a good job, or I want them to dress well, or I want the same humor, or we like the same music. And in reality, in relationship, these things are very easy to change. You could help, your partner could be willing to change the way they dress, or they could get another job. Or when you get to know someone, for a long time, you build the same humor and you like the same music. But if your partner does not have the similar core values that matter to you, like if they're not honest, that's not going to be changing. Like if they're not consistent, reliable, genuine, assertive, like expressive, vulnerable, that's much, much harder to change. So I always want to encourage people to really think about the core values in the other person, less so than the qualities.
So we have a really good question from Loretta. I'm having a hard time choosing just a few values. Any tips on prioritizing?
Well, I would say that if you want a tip on prioritizing, think about your values, and then think about what are the particular values that you want to bring to mind with the thoughts and the feelings connected to that schema. For example, if you have a self-sacrifice schema and you tend to feel guilty in relationships, then I would ask yourself, what do you want to be about when you're feeling guilty, right? Like I want to behave, I bring different values to mind when I feel guilty, right? Or when I feel angry. Like when I'm angry, I want to bring certain values to mind, like curiosity, flexibility, openness, right? When I feel guilty, I actually want to bring assertiveness and honesty. Yeah. So you want to really be thinking about what are the behaviors that you tend to do with your particular schemas, and what are the
Mhm.
feelings that tend to come up with those schemas. And then you want to ask yourself, how would you really, what do you want to be about, right? When you feel guilty, when you feel shame and broken or defective, or when you're feeling mistrustful and suspicious, right?
I have a question for you, Abby. So we have a mix of people that are in relationships and people that are dating right now. Like you mentioned, like when you're assessing dates with different values, how does this change at all for relationships, or is it pretty much the same core principles?
It's the same core principles. Yeah. You want to be thinking about, is your partner in alignment with the values that matter for you in relationships and what's important for you? Content is easier to change, right? And the process is harder, right? Like getting our underlying needs met, or negotiating with somebody is much easier when they bring certain values, right? Like being cooperative, right? Being collaborative, being flexible.
Cool. So should we get into this exercise then?
I'm thinking that if we check in, if nobody has any questions about anything, then we
Yeah.
should get into the exercise.
Okay, we got one more. It's from Sonia. We have, when thinking of values, is this referring to values we hold for ourselves or ones that we want to see in partners? Great question.
So it's both. I think that we're going to this is the question that kind of we answer a little bit in the values rating scale in the slide. I don't know if we want to go into that slide right now or if we want to come back to it.
Let's save this for later. Let's
Yeah?
let's go through the exercise because I think that will
All
make it
right.
a lot more clear for people.
Well, this question is noted and it will be answered in one of our slides.
There
Don't
you
you
go.
worry.
Stay
This is a
tuned.
core question.
Yes. We're not just going to answer, we're going to help you track it because I'm a behavioral therapist. So I love tracking everything. I love tracking my values, my partner's values. I want evidence for everything.
So Sonia,
Prove
all the
it.
values for everyone.
Well, let's see. I wonder if somebody's willing to come up here. I mean, it's a vulnerable position to be in. So if somebody's willing to do that and work on their schemas, we could do that.
So yeah, I
We'll
guess
see.
if anyone wants to be the volunteer, did I just see Ryan raise
I
his hand?
Yes, I see a hand.
Okay, let's get Ryan. Was that a hand raise or was that like a hair
Ryan,
twirl?
oh, he says sure,
Okay.
but then he turned off his camera.
Yes,
so
I'm
that's to me mixed signals. Yeah.
right. Well,
Like,
Oh, he said,
is
let's
that-
do it. He's back. He's back.
Was that a subjugation schema?
Awesome. Yay, Ryan.
hi, Ryan. Give it up for Ryan Jeffrey.
To go to the chat, it closes out the video. So
Oh,
I
that
got it.
the mobile phone Zoom. There we go.
Well, Ryan, do you know what some of your schemas are?
yeah, so I rated pretty highly in perfectionism, and then I rated like moderately high in self-sacrifice. And then I had it pulled up here just a second ago. Hold on, sorry.
It's all right.
And then yeah, entitlement was like the next closest thing, but it said it was fairly low. And then everything else was kind of lower than that, but those are like the top three.
I see. All right. Well, let's play with this. I usually do this in person, so we'll see how this goes because I'm gonna try to do an exercise with Ryan, and I'm hoping that we could all do it at once. So let's see
Okay.
if all of us could do this exercise. It's gonna.
So should
We'll see
everyone
how it
get
plays out.
everyone have their
everybody-
pen and paper?
Everybody have a pen and paper. And even you guys, Julie and
Oh,
you,
we're doing
if you
it.
wanna-
Don't
yeah,
worry.
let's.
I've been ready.
So
We're always ready for schemas, Abby.
all right. So we're gonna start with if you could write down a couple of negative thoughts that come up for you in relationships. So if you see if you could just write down some negative thoughts that come up. And if it's difficult for you to think up of any negative thoughts, then you could either think about the last partner you had or the last date that you went on. What kind of fears did you have? What kind of thoughts came up? Or you could also think about a past partner or your current partner, about a conflict, a moment where you had a conflict and you had like negative thoughts that come up about them or about you or about the relationship.
Abby, can you give us some
So,
examples of negative thoughts?
So for example, some negative thoughts could sound like, this person is lying to me, they're using me, I shouldn't trust them. That was all mistrust. Or it could be, what have I done wrong? It's my fault. Are they going to leave me? Did I do the wrong thing? It could be something like feeling subjugated. So feeling like, that kind of feels like this person is controlling me, they're manipulating me, or I'm helpless, things are out of control. Or it could also be something like, let me think of another ski. Well, perfectionism looks really nitpicky, right? Like this person's job is not good enough. This person's this is not good enough, right? And it could also be with yourself. Am I not good enough for this person?
What about anxious that they're going to flake? Anxiety.
Oh, anxiety that they're going to flake. Yeah, definitely. Anxiety that they're going to flake. I'm trying to think of, or self-sacrifice is like when you're feeling guilty, right? You're feeling like kind of conflicted about not wanting to do something, but you have a hard time saying no, right? Maybe you want to leave a date early, right? Or you end up doing things, right, that you don't want to do, right? So that might sound like, oh, they're really sad. I don't want to hurt them. I don't want to reject them, or right, like any kind of moment where it's difficult to assert.
Here's a good question from Sonia. Anxiety is a feeling, not a thought. How does that translate?
Let's also write all of the negative feelings, or any feelings, they don't have to be negative, but all of the feelings that come up with these thoughts. So Ryan, do you want to share some of the thoughts that you wrote down?
Yeah. So actually, one of the things that you mentioned was literally the first thing that I wrote, which is, am I good enough for them? Are they good enough for me? I don't know. That's like a difficult balance that I always struggle with. It feels like there has to be like some degree of balance.
What else? What other thoughts? Like
am I
more
doing enough for them? Am I doing too much?
In your last relationships, did you feel like you did too much or not enough?
In some aspects, yes, and in some aspects, like yes to both. I mean, I had a partner who like lost his job, and I took on the responsibility of finances and taking care of things, and he became like severely depressed for a while, so I took care of a lot of that stuff. But then, there are aspects of like, was I supportive enough? Did I do the right kind of things to push that person to be able to recover from it or to support themselves? Did I, that kind of back and forth.
How does that show up for you in your dating life? Like when you're going out on dates now, what does that look like in your dates?
I think in that regard, I wonder sometimes if I like communicate too much, or if especially because I've like been a serial monogamist for most of my adult life. I've been in long-term relationships. So I think I have this expectation of what's kind of normal for maybe couples that have been together, but then you try to date, and I have unrealistic expectations sometimes, I think, for communicating, or maybe like how often it is to touch base, because everybody has a different standard for that.
Let me ask you something. If that was true, if you shared too much, what would that mean? What's the fear behind that?
Probably that person, if I like them, are gonna pull away, or not be interested in me anymore because they might see me as too needy. Or I mean, maybe not responsive enough. I don't know, because there are times where like, I guess maybe somebody that I'm only like moderately interested in, I may only give them like, not like 100% of my time.
I understand.
So maybe that's not enough.
By the way, this is really resonating with Chris, who says, Ryan, I'm going to need you to stop describing my last relationship.
And low,
Many of us have been there.
So I hope everybody's writing down the actual statements that come up in your own mind very specifically, right? So I have, am I good enough? Are they good enough? I have, was I supportive enough? Did I share too much? Are my expectations unrealistic? Are they going to lose interest? Are they going to pull away? any other thoughts that come up for you when dating
Are
or in your
they
last
ambitious
relationship?
or driven? Are they ambitious or driven enough, or um, are they giving me enough time? Am I giving
Mhm.
them or am I expecting too much of their time? Um, those are kind of the ones that I had the time to write down, I guess.
All right. What kind of feelings come up for you when this comes up?
Um, I guess like apprehension for like finding somebody that I'm interested in and then losing their attention or losing their like uh I guess like their presence.
So I
I
heard apprehension. Is the other one fear? Is that correct? Meaning you start feeling afraid you may lose them. Is that correct? Or
yeah, anxiety probably. I'm a pretty anxious person
anxiety?
by default.
We all think that, but everybody's anxious. But so we have apprehension, fear, anxiety. Like it sounds like there's some doubt. I'm going to put doubt, even though that's not really a feeling, but it's an experience. Anything else that comes up for you? Like what?
Excitement. Like I mean I do get pretty excited. I like I don't know how to I guess how would you for feeling wise warm fuzzies I guess because also the prospect of like having that is kind of also nice like and getting it right is a nice feeling as well. So
Well, how do you feel when you're wondering if you got it right or not?
anxious, yeah.
Is there any, as if somebody says to you something like you didn't support me enough, or your expectations are not very realistic, like what would
Disappointment.
come up for disappointment? Okay.
Mm.
Yeah, disappointment in myself, yeah, for sure.
So it's
And
I don't like
disappointment in yourself.
yeah, if somebody said to me that I wasn't supportive enough or I wasn't encouraging enough, definitely I would be disappointed in myself.
Hmm.
I'd love to hear
Well,
some of the ones in the chat. We have one from Amy G. Are they on the same timeline as I am? That one I think comes up a
ah,
lot.
what
That's a
else?
good one too.
I
I would say
like from
that's that.
Haley, I find that usually my anxious thoughts start with what if. See
Right.
that?
But then it's really important for us to finish that sentence, right? Because somebody's what if could be like, what if this person tries to control me? And another person's what if is, what if this person leaves me? And another person's what if is, what if this person disappoints me, right? And another person's what if is, what if I disappoint them? But we tend to kind of lean a certain way. Like the person that's more afraid of others disappointing them is less afraid of disappointing others. We all lean a certain way.
So we have from Jason, they're too hot or sexy for me. Low, I wonder if they'll change and I'll get stuck with a different person.
Ah,
Cynthia, are they lying
that's
about their
mistrust.
intentions?
A
That's
lot. So we do
mistrust.
have some mistrust here. Good to know. So make sure that you all have all of your thoughts and feelings written down. As the more you have, the better for you, and the more you are clear on feelings, anxiety, fear. Often we have fear, shame, guilt. Um, right, if there's mistrust, it's usually like a main feeling that comes with mistrust is suspicion and fear, and a main kind of feeling that comes up with self-sacrifice is guilt. Perfectionism, the main feeling that comes up with perfectionism is disappointment is the number one feeling that
Mhm.
comes with perfectionism, right?
That's pretty much everyone I wrote down.
Mhm. Pretty much. And Abby, I'm starting to see this trend in our chat where I think a lot of people have these thoughts around the future, the
Mhm.
unknown. So, look, like Janice, what if they randomly change their mind based on one conversation or interaction?
So that's
Hannah,
abandonment, right? So what if they
mm,
leave me? What if they change their mind? What if I scare them away? Let's write all of these down. And once you have all them down, now turn the paper to the other side, and I'm going to ask you, what have these thoughts and feelings stopped you from doing anything important in relationships? Like, what important things have these thoughts and feelings stopped you from doing in relationships? Like, have they stopped you from being vulnerable? Have they stopped you from initiating? Have they stopped you from showing affection? Have they stopped you from being honest? Have they stopped you from saying no? Have they stopped you from um, showing more interest, right? being more vulnerable in your interest? Have they stopped you from being consistent or reaching out? Have they stopped you maybe from um, expressing yourself? Or let's see, Ryan, what have these thoughts and feelings stopped you from doing? Like, what is the thought? Did I share too much? What does that thought stop you from doing?
So sharing too much is not usually like a concern that I have, but definitely like giving the am I good enough or are they good enough thing is a big one for me. Um,
So when
and
your
I
mind is
guess
wondering that, what has it stopped you from doing?
it has literally actually stopped me from like entertaining a probably somewhat like otherwise for all other intents and purposes good person like the time that they probably deserve, just because sometimes I will kind of run through that and I will feel like I don't know, maybe somebody that is the same age as me but maybe not like as driven or professionally like inclined, that they are just not
So
worth my time, or vice versa, that I might
so
not be as successful as someone else.
if I'm understanding correctly, are you saying that it stops you from giving somebody a chance, or
Yeah.
help me
Mm.
understand? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, or giving myself the chance to be like myself with someone because I might feel like they may be too much for me, I guess.
So if I'm hearing you say it stops me from being myself, then would it be fair to say like being genuine or being authentic or being vulnerable?
Yeah.
What resonates there? Or being
Yeah.
honest or
Not honest. Honesty is not really a problem for me. I'm pretty transparent a lot of times. And like so I'm HIV positive. That's something that I usually disclose to somebody like up front. So like the honesty thing is not as big for me, but I guess maybe allowing myself to be um my own. I definitely like resign myself a bit, or I keep myself a little bit more reserved. Like because I can
so
be
I'm going to
pretty
say
out there sometimes.
right. Let's see if we could come up with a couple of very specific behaviors. So I'm going to say some things, and you tell me whether they're right or not. Yeah. So being expressive, being
Yeah, I would say,
genuine, like being vulnerable, or being what like giving somebody a chance, or being available, or help me understand. Like the
yeah.
last date you went on, you were having thoughts like, are they going to lose interest? Are they going to pull away?
Hmm.
Was I supportive enough? Are they good enough? Like, what do any of these thoughts? What have they stopped you from doing? Like,
I would
have you
definitely say
stopped
it's
your?
led to me being more reserved. I
So
I like to try and
if
be
you
somebody
if you
who's
weren't, go ahead. The positive, not reserved, but
yeah, I like to try and be somebody who's like in control of their facility. So even like if I'm like drinking with friends and stuff, I usually will not allow myself to drink to the point to where I'm like, some people will drink and they'll like allow themselves to just kind of let loose and have fun. I'm typically the type of person who will stop drinking before I reach the point of where like I'm not able to like control myself fully, because I have to be in control of
so
myself.
I'm losing you a little bit. Let's try to condense. Yeah. So
Okay.
are you saying you want to be are you saying you want to be more controlled? Is that what you're saying? Or you're saying you want to be more present? Is that,
Yeah, I guess
or
more present is more direct to it. Yeah, because I have a
do you want
tendency
to,
to,
has it stopped you from being direct?
yeah, I would say.
Okay.
We're getting a lot in the chat around
Okay.
anxiety. Can I read some of these off? I feel like there's a lot of people resonating in here. So we have from Chris, they've stopped me from saying no. Sonia, the anxiety gets so high, I stop breathing. Eventually, the anxiety piles up and it ends. I'm afraid
All
if
right.
I'll, yep.
So stops you from saying no. What else?
Janice, these thoughts have stopped me from being internally calm. A lot of people said, yes, I agree with that one. Low, I go crazy in my head and on the outside pretend it's all Gucci. And a lot of people.
So that sounds like it stops you from being a genuine, authentic,
Mhm.
right?
And Yen said, I don't fully express myself. So kind of in the
Mm-hmm.
same camp over there.
I don't fully what?
Express myself.
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah, I would say
do any of those
genuine.
resonate with you, Ryan?
genuine is probably the thing. It's not that I'm like disingenuous. It's just not like I'm not my like full self. Like I tend to have a pretty bubbly and out there personality, and I think I reserve or I retract my personality a little bit to like keep it more tame or more approachable sometimes.
So it stops you from being spontaneous. Would that be fair?
Sure.
Being spontaneous,
Yeah.
uh, being more free.
Hmm.
Would that be fair?
Yeah.
Like being authentic or being direct.
Yeah.
Mhm. What is a thought? Am I doing too much? What does that stop you from? Or what is a
Um,
thought? Are they good enough? Are they good enough for me? What is that thought? What does that thought stop you from doing?
I mean, yeah, I've like not allowed myself to really see somebody before, I guess. It's like, I don't know. I guess the like, if anybody ever thinks of the term like, could I bring this person home to mom type of
Mm-hmm.
thing, that kind of like mentality has like definitely stopped me from talking to somebody before. It's like, this person is probably okay, but I don't know that I could bring him home to my mom. So they're
So
probably not good enough for
so
me.
being open to someone, giving them a chance. I'm gonna put giving someone a chance.
Yeah.
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 Me being more available in relationship. Do you think that does that one resonate with you?
Yeah. I don't think that I'm not available. I definitely try to,
Can I point something out, Ryan? I'm just going to
yeah.
play with this, but I want to notice that, like, if I was going to kind of describe the schema that's showing up for you the most right now in this interaction, it's definitely perfectionism, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I could notice how the perfectionism really stops you from like giving answers, right? That are more kind of clear and direct. Like, it stops you from being clear, you know? It stops you from, right? Like, being on point, or having, like, it stops you from really like holding a stance, taking a stance. You're like, I kind of do this, but I do this. Like, I am honest, but I could be more honest, and just to notice, like, that's all the perfectionism, right? Like,
Mhm.
we
Why
don't have
is
to
that,
do this.
Abby?
What do you mean?
Why do you think, is it because you just want to get something perfect that you don't
you
do
it,
put it out at
it's
all?
see That's exactly what it's like. I would say that probably what shows up for you in relationship the most is exactly what Julie said. You wanting to get it so perfect that it doesn't come out at all, right? It's like you want to get
Mm.
you want me to get just the right words of what stops you, that actually you're paralyzed and you're not in relationship. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's interesting to notice, like, when we get too perfectionistic, we're really paralyzed. You know what I mean? We can't go forward or backwards because we want it to just be perfect, and things just could never be perfect. Um, so
But this is sort of a really compelling moment for Ryan, I feel like, because you've always presented yourself as someone very open and vulnerable and open to speak. But at the same time, what we're witnessing here is that your openness is also hindered by your perfectionism. Because I think in your mind, you are a very open and vulnerable person, but we're not seeing the full Ryan yet. It's
Yeah,
interesting.
I'd say that's fair.
well, it seems like it's hard to stick to something, right? It's hard to go, this is right, because if we say that this has stopped you from being spontaneous, for example, we're not saying that every single date you've ever went on and every person you've been with, you haven't been spontaneous, right? We're just saying, has this thought or any of these thoughts ever stopped you from something ever, right? So anything we write here doesn't, this doesn't mean Ryan is then never spontaneous, right?
I just want to point out the chat that everyone is saying, thank you, Ryan, for being so vulnerable. You're helping me so much. I love what Cynthia said. Oh my God, this is like an Oprah moment. It's a breakthrough, Lo said. But yeah.
Ryan, does this resonate with you? Does it resonate with you that maybe some of this, like the going back and forth, stops you from maybe connecting with what you're really wanting, with what you're really needing, with what you're feeling in the moment, or from
Yeah,
being
I would say
present?
that's
Does
true.
that
Yeah.
so we'll say it stops me from connecting with myself in the moment.
Hmm. Yeah.
Definitely, that's one of like the things
What
that I've
I
tried to commit myself to lately is trying to be more present and more like actually living in that moment. Yeah.
so being present, does it resonate? Connecting with what I really want, what I'm really needing? Does that?
Hmm.
All right, we're getting there now. It feels like we're getting there.
Mhm.
So
So
what
Abby,
I'm needing.
how can other people kind of translate this for themselves too while we're working with Ryan?
We're gonna have to do to the in the breakout rooms. Hopefully
Okay.
we'll get to translate everyone's. We'll do our best to get everyone's coping behaviors and values. So let me ask you. Now this is kind of what happens. Like when this shows up for you, yeah. Like even right now, right? You're wondering, am I doing this right? Is Abby doing this right? Is this person good enough for me? Am I not good enough for them? Right? There's like this doubt and there's this conflict that comes up for you, right? And then there's like a feeling of fear and anxiety and a little bit of paralysis, right? So this
Hmm.
kind of shows up for you. And then I ask you, when this shows up for you in dates, what do you tend to do? Right? Like when we get triggered in relationships, it's like it's so close to us. It's like this, right? Like the fear, the anxiety. Did I share too much? I have here, like, are they going to pull away? Are they going to lose interest? Right? What do you tend to do when this kind of stuff shows up for you?
Yeah, it sends me into like a spiral usually. I tend to go into like an overthinking, like uh anxious like spiral.
Yeah, I see that. I see that. And so I think that let's see if we can understand what that looks like in the moment. Because if in the moment your mind is doing that, I'm assuming that then maybe you're not paying attention to your partner as much or the date. You're disconnecting with what you're feeling or your body or what you're needing. You're kind of here in your head, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you're not sharing something with maybe you're not sharing, you're not being spontaneous, right? No, you're
Yeah.
not being free. You're kind of over analyzing. You're kind of rigid a bit, right? And so the more that you kind of get caught up in your head like this, and the more that, right, like you avoid feeling this by then getting it perfect, getting it right, being indirect, right? The more that you do that, the further away your values are, right? Do you notice that? It's
Yeah.
like it's like if you don't want to have the thoughts and feelings connected with your values, and if you do certain things like you're not as vulnerable, you're not as honest, you're not initiating as much, or even right, like if I'm doubtful about somebody, for example, let's say doubt is really, really close to me. Doubt is like here. I
Mhm.
may not, I may not be very committed, right? I may go, maybe I'll see you, maybe I won't. Maybe this is
Mhm.
working, maybe it isn't, right? And then what's further away from me, right, is being committed, being vulnerable, saying I am interested in you, these are the things I enjoyed about you, I would like to see you again, right? All of that is kind of further away. So my question to you is, would you be willing, like would you be willing to bring a lot of like the doubts, for example, that come with your perfectionism? Or it also seems like there's some stuff here also about abandonment, right? Like the pulling, is this person going to pull away from me? Am I too much? Like, would you be willing the next time that you have the thought that you're too much? Would you be willing to do one of these things here? Be
Yeah.
spontaneous or be genuine or say something very direct or decisive, right? Can I put decisive on here?
Yeah.
Does that
That's a good
resonate?
one.
That is a
Being
good one. Yeah.
Decisive is a
decisive.
very good one.
Decisive. Perfectionism actually really stops us from making decisions, right?
Yes. Yes.
Really stop. Because we're like, what's the best decision I could possibly make, right? Or who's the best partner for me? Should I stay with this person? There's all these other options, right? But we could notice what's really important here is that you could have this thought. You could have the thought, is this person right for me? Are they wrong? Do I like them? Do I not? And you could still move towards doing something direct. You could still move towards being spontaneous or being present, right? Connecting with something that you're wanting or feeling and then sharing that, right? Or
Okay.
being really decisive, right? Being like, I'd like to go out with you next Friday, right? I'd like to have a phone call. I'd like to have a Zoom date with you next Tuesday, right? You could still be decisive, even with the fear, even with the apprehension, even with the not knowing. So what would be, maybe we could all chat a little bit about this before we go to the breakout rooms. But in your breakout rooms, what I'd like you all to do is to look at your list of the things that it's stopping you from doing, like the values. Ask yourself if there's any values that this is connected to, and then see if you could come up with a very specific behavior that you could do on your next date. So it looks like picking a very familiar thought that comes up for you on a date, and then saying exactly what you're going to do on your next date when that thought comes up. Does that make sense?
So could you walk us through another example? Like, I think just maybe like a couple more just to like start planting some things in people's minds would be great.
I'm going to try and do it really, really quickly. Yeah. Like, cause I want to make sure that people could have the opportunity in the breakout rooms. Do you guys want to give me some examples?
Let's use the anxious one, because that kept coming up in the chat a lot. Like, this
Yeah.
person, you know, they're not going to follow through, or they're going to stop texting me, whatever that is, and that makes
They won't
me
follow
pull
through.
back, essentially.
They're basically going to eventually disappoint me.
Yep.
They will disappoint me. So then the question is, what is the thought "they will disappoint me" stop you from doing? Has this thought stopped you from initiating, saying affectionate words? You know, because in the beginning of dating, like, we're not so sure, right? We do have doubt, right? And we do have a lot of fear. So has this stopped you from saying, "I'd like to see you again," or from texting? Or maybe it stopped you from asserting yourself, maybe in a moment when they didn't call you back on time, or something didn't work out, you were disappointed, you didn't go, "Hey, I feel disappointed," or, "Hey." Does it stop you from expressing what you're needing or expressing what you're wanting? Has the thought "they will disappoint you," does that stop you from them asking for things, right? Like, if I have the belief that I'm going to be disappointed, maybe I don't really ask for things, then I'm not going to be disappointed, right? And so I would ask you, because again, we could all have the same thought and the same feelings, and we could do a radically different behavior, right? So what's really important here is the other side of this paper, and asking yourself, what has it specifically stopped you from doing? If it stops you from requesting things and asking for things and asserting yourself, would you be willing to do that? If it stops you, for example, from being vulnerable or sharing your needs, or maybe it stops you from initiating, being available, being committed, would you be willing to take a small step towards that? Does that answer the question?
I think, Louise kind of summed it up well. For breakout rooms, think about a thought or feeling that you typically have on a date in relationships. Then think about what stops you from doing, and then share what you will do instead in caps next time. Perfect.
Right. So you're gonna, and then you really want to make sure that you tell yourself, well, the next time I have this scary thought, I'm going to, and it looks very, very specific, right? So if I'm on a date and the date ends, and I'm going, does this person like me? Are they going to pull away? Do I like them? Are they good enough? Are they not good enough? I have it on my piece of paper, and it says, this is the moment for you to be vulnerable and ask them out on a second date. And then I do that behavior right in that moment. So you want to make sure that you take the general values and turn them into a very specific thing that you could do in that very moment. And then we're going to talk a little bit about, are you willing to even look at all of your feared thoughts and feelings and look at them right before your date, right before you do the behavior? Are you willing to even bring this a little bit closer? Because the feelings and the thoughts are all connected to your schemas. And what we want to do with these feelings and thoughts here is we want to start kind of relating to them with some love, right? With some gentleness. I'm being silly and I'm holding it like this, but really we want to go, wow, I feel fear and I feel anxiety. And rather than trying to push it away by being non-committal, by being indecisive, by not sharing, by being vulnerable, instead of pushing away these thoughts and feelings, we bring these thoughts and feelings closer, so that then our values and the kind of person that we want to be in a relationship is also closer.
So we have one question before we go into breakout rooms from Sonia. Oftentimes it's hard to identify thoughts. There's simply anxiety. Any suggestions of how to identify the thoughts, let alone what they prevent?
Yes. What I would ask you is imagine the last time you had this anxiety. What happened? What did you say? What did the other person say? what triggered the anxiety? What triggered that moment when you had that anxiety? And then you'll notice that if you walk yourself back to that situation, the thoughts will come to you, because in reality, we're always having thoughts when we have these feelings. Our thoughts are kind of escalating our feelings. So it's very hard to have a feeling of anxiety without our thoughts kind of creating that. So you want to know, what was the last time in your relationship that you had this anxiety, and what was your mind telling you in that moment? What was your mind telling you about yourself, about the other person, about what's going to happen? What does the storyline sound like, and what schema is it connected to?
Okay. I
Here's
think,
a good,
yeah.
good example from Louise. She says, my thoughts and feelings typically stop me from sharing authentically and vulnerably about myself. Next time I will share something, a vulnerable story or something about myself. And that's a really great, like, one action you can do on a date. For me, it's my thoughts stop me from further showing interest in someone. So something I
Right.
could do on a next date is to simply tell someone I had a good time, because a lot of times
Right.
I'm even scared to say that because I'm just so afraid of them disappointing me.
And I think
yeah.
a good point that you made here is that we don't have to do a huge behavior. Like if it stops you from showing interest, you don't have to go, hey, I love you, let's be together, or I'm committed, right? You could do a tiny thing, right? Like, hey, I had a good time, or hey, like
Right.
I really enjoyed this about you, right? We just take something that feels really huge and we turn it into the tiniest little behavior. But it matters that we do it in moments when we have an urge to do a different thing, to do an old behavior that then creates a self-fulfilling prophecy and keeps us stuck in the same exact dynamic.
I think the last question, and then I think maybe as we do it, that will become more clear, letting people do it. The last one from Janice, I'm stuck on how to change the behavior.
Well, I think that I'm hoping that maybe we could talk a little bit more about that, either in the breakout rooms, or if somebody wants to, or if Janice wants to come up here and we'll do a little exercise, we could talk about that. But yeah, that's a longer conversation. But if somebody's brave enough, to come up here, and I'm going to talk as we go to the breakout rooms with Ryan a little bit about what is a specific behavior that you could do on your next date. While other people are in the breakout rooms, we'll come up with a specific behavior that brings some of these values into one action that you could do next time.
Okay, let's move to the breakout rooms. I think that will help, just people like verbally getting it
Talk it
out.
through.
I think will be good.
And then I think it'll be good to ask the questions in face to face rather than over the thing, because then we'll have more info.
Perfect. So Louise is going to automatically put you all in breakout sessions, and then it will reconvene. So
Yeah. I had Ryan in a breakout room though, so I need to do some reconfiguring. Actually, Ryan, I'm going to put you in a room, but then maybe come out and then, yeah, and then I'll assign someone else to your spot. Okay. 1 second, everyone.
Ryan, you didn't know what you signed up for, did you?
I'm in trouble.
It's very brave. It's very brave to talk about, our deep fears and relationships, and in a forum with all of these faces.
Awesome. So we're going to call up a couple people to share their aha moments. So we're going to keep them relatively short, just a quick, like, one-liner of what your moment was in that breakout session. So we're going to use the virtual hand raise. Does everyone know how to do that?
So under reactions, if you're on a laptop, at the very bottom, there's like a little smiley face and it says reactions. If you click on that, there's a raise hand option. You see that? Great. If you raise your hand, lower your hand right now. Lower your hand. It's the same thing. Okay. So on the count of 3, I'm going to ask for any volunteers to just raise your hand, and we'll call you to share your aha moments. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Oh, we got a few.
Great. Let's start with Greg. What were your aha moments? Let's keep it to 60 seconds or less.
Okay, my aha moment was just to be more open with what I'm thinking and not just keep it all inside and just stay this almost blank slate till later.
Love that.
Greg, do you know what thought stops you from being open?
Broadly, perfectionism, because it's like I won't trying to figure out, okay, what's the right thing? How much do I like this person? Are we the
Right.
person? And, should I, keep going with this or whatever?
So then, Greg, would you be willing on your next date to have that feeling of uncertainty, right? Like the uncertainty and the doubt, and still be open? Would you be willing to do that? Even in the moment? Would you be willing in the moment when you're having that uncertainty or the doubt to, in that very moment, to then say something that is open?
I'm going to try.
Hey, that's enough. The first step to committing is I'm going to try. Awesome. Love it.
Thanks, Greg.
Okay.
Go
who
on
else?
to Jason.
Okay. My aha moment is to sort of figure out what I observed and what I really liked about somebody on a date and send like a very cute follow-up. Like, it was so nice to hear about like your family adventure to San Diego. Like, I can't wait to like research and figure out that spot. It was nice meeting you, and sort of find something in that date that makes it stand out. In our group was like to go above and beyond and not just say it was fun or I had a good time or we should do that again. And it was like, wow, I can like, all I want to do on a date is just learn some new things and sort of, if it was a good connection, just tell them and share. That's how I'm, interested and intrigued to go out again.
Do you know what thoughts or feelings might come up that may try to stop you from doing that? That may be a barrier?
Yeah, like a rejection or somebody not possibly seeing eye to eye with me, and also not being good enough, and that being a result of them not sharing that attraction or interest.
I'm going to ask you the same question I just asked the person before you, which is, would you be willing to kind of bring that experience a little bit closer, right? Would you be willing to bring that fear, right? Or right, like that feeling of not knowing or right, or right, like shame, right? A little bit closer, and still be kind of put yourself out there and take that risk, even if it's
we got Abby mute. Okay, you're not
even
mute anymore.
even if it might not end up in the way you would want, right?
I think I would, because it would draw me closer to seeing that connection early on, and really putting myself out there on a skinny branch and being like that would be the way to like get going and knowing somebody.
Yeah, I'm in support.
Thanks.
Me too.
Love it.
Thanks,
Who
Jason.
else wants to share? Oh, we got
Sonia. There she is.
Yeah, it was the question was the aha moment.
Yes.
Just that everything is coming together. So I started thinking about, Abby, what you had answered around how to figure out what that thought was behind it, and that ties into the emotional deprivation. Usually when I'm really anxious, I feel like I cannot set boundaries, or somebody wants to do something and that doesn't fit with my needs or my plans or anything. And usually I've just, like, honestly, until earlier this year, the thought that I could say no or say like, hey, let's change the plan just didn't occur to me. And while we were talking, Greg was in the breakout rooms, asked why is that? And I started thinking about that, and it was like, I don't know. And then I realized, well, of course, if I say something different, then I'm not perfect. I'm not agreeable. I'm not easy to be around. I'm going to be high maintenance. I'm not the perfect girlfriend. And then I realized, oh, well, that ties into the perfectionism schema. So just all coming together. Those were my top ones, the emotional deprivation, perfectionism. So having a little bit more faith in the schema research.
So I'm going to ask you the same question. Would you be willing to be high maintenance? Would you be willing to be that girlfriend that has needs? Would you be willing to have that fear? Would you be willing to have, right, like the uncertainty? And still in that moment, I think like the behavior, I think that you are stating that you're going to do is kind of, if you're not a hell yes, you're going to say no.
Mhm.
Like you're either a hell yes or a no. There's no, like, if you're a maybe, it's a no. And the next time in a relationship, you're going to practice that.
Yeah, I would be willing to do that. I think if nothing else, it would be a good experiment to see, am I actually high maintenance, or is this just this blown up fear, which I think it is in my head.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Most people that have the belief that they're high maintenance tend to be low maintenance.
Interesting.
It would be an experiment. I'd be curious. So
Ah,
Ask a question.
I'm in
To-
support of experimenting.
Can I
Awesome.
ask a question to flip that script around about the high maintenance, low maintenance? Is that, do people who think that they're low maintenance actually are high maintenance?
That is more likely, yes. I want to talk really quickly about the last slide, so that then, you know, I could go over it really quickly, and then if we still have time, maybe we could talk to Janice, because Janice wants to work on her behavior, and I want to help her do that.
Yeah.
I want to help Janice do a new behavior, but yeah. So this slide, so often people ask me, right, we saw a lot of people say this actually, am I not good enough? Are they not good enough? Is this relationship not working because I've done something wrong, or did my partner do something wrong? What's happening here? And what I think is really important to remember, this sheet, right, is you put all of your values like compassion, honesty, assertiveness, right? You put all your values, you rate how important they are. And then what you want to do is you want to rate yourself from 0 to 100, and then your partner from 0 to 100. So basically, if I am being compassionate at a 40% out of 100, and my partner's being compassionate at a 30% out of 100, and I'm being honest at a 20%, and they're being honest at a 30, I'm being assertive at a 30, and they're being honest at a 30, I'm always going to be on the fence. I'm going to be wondering, this relationship doesn't feel good, but is it that the relationship is not working for me, or can it be fixed? And if you look at this example here, this is an example where it's very clear that it is the relationship, because as long as you're consistent with your own values, you're consistent with the kind of partner that you want to be. When you're compassionate at a 92, you're honest at a 90, you're assertive at an 85, you're kind, you're consistent, you're reliable, you're honest, you're collaborative, you're cooperative. When you're being consistent with all of your values, then you want to see, is this person being honest? How compassionate are they from 0 to 100? How affectionate are they from 0 to 100, right? How collaborative, how consistent? But and I see a comment here, I'm not good at under
So if we don't currently have a partner, are we putting down numbers for a dream partner?
Well, you could put down the numbers for your dates, and you could still rate your own consistent behaviors in all of your relationships. Are you being compassionate with your mom? Are you being collaborative with your coworker? Are you being kind with your friends? Are you being consistent? Are you being honest? Every move we make is bringing us, is creating neuronal connections that we're either going to be more likely to do these behaviors or less likely.
Abby, Brian says that chart is so helpful, especially when we're really into someone and lose track of our needs. I was going to say this chart is also really helpful for anybody getting over a relationship, just to figure out like what did go wrong and were we actually compatible. It's a very quantitative way of looking at it.
I think my aha when we did this exercise in the dry run was that, like I mentioned, that when I start to feel anxious, I pull back. But at the end of the day, reliability and empathy, those are traits that I value in a relationship. So instead of pulling back, I need to also show them myself. And then at that point, if the partner can't meet them, then it's not the right relationship. But if I never try to do them myself either, I'll never know if it's me or the relationship.
That is exactly it. We want to practice doing new behaviors, because as long as we're doing the old behaviors, as long as we're doing the behaviors that are connected to our schemas, we create a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it just repeats the same exact pattern in all of our relationships.
Mm.
So maybe we do have a second to bring Janice up, because I feel like that's kind of a good segue to the behavior.
Let's bring Janice up.
All right.
Janice in the
Ooh,
spotlight.
my video spotlighted for everyone. So my behavior, it's not actually in early dates. It's a little bit in, like, a couple months in, when I realize that I'm attracted to someone, I have feelings for someone, and I'll go into kind of a protracted period where it's total abandonment, and then I check my phone all the time as some sort of validation and confirmation, because I'm afraid that this person is going to change their mind all of a sudden, and it's never ever happened, but that I'm not going to notice. So then I'm kind of checking and monitoring, and it totally stops me from being calm and present, and it stops me from actually enjoying that early phase of it.
Right. So
both far enough in that we've decided that we're having daily contact, but somehow I start going places.
So I'll say a couple of things to that, because I think this is familiar for a lot of people with kind of an anxious attachment style, right? So there's a couple of different pieces here. And piece number one is that values are never feelings. So if you say, I would feel calmer, I would ask you, if you felt calmer, how would you be behaving differently? So you'd be checking your phone less. Maybe you'd be seeking less reassurance.
Yes.
Right. So then we want to work on those behaviors. Then you check your phone less, you seek less reassurance, or maybe you'd make requests that would help you feel safer in the relationship. Like, for example, instead of checking my phone all the time, I could go, would you be willing for us to check in every night at 9? Then I never have to check my phone, because I know that they're going to do that. Right. So it's like you could make certain requests.
I think actually I do. And those agreements are actually in place. And I'm still doing that.
So if you're still doing that, then the work is really not about doing the behaviors, right? It's like you make sure that you do these behaviors so that your relationships are not going to be damaged. But the other piece of it is intrapersonal, right? This is interpersonal, right? You make sure that you're asking for things that make you feel safer in the relationship, right? But this part is, how do you relate to this experience? Are you willing to kind of notice where in your body this urgency comes up and this fear comes up, right? And doing some self-validating and self-compassion. I want to make the point that all of our values, when you're looking at the list of values, those values are about doing for others and for yourself. So if my value is being honest, I want to be honest with others and with myself. If I have a value of being compassionate, I want to be compassionate with others and with myself, right? If I want to be cooperative and collaborative, I want to be cooperative with others and with myself, like kind with others and with myself. So what would it look like to be a little bit kinder with yourself, right? And you make a rule. The behavior is you do not check your phone, right? You have certain rules. You ask for the person, I need consistency. Would you be willing, right? You make a request to text this often. And then you make an agreement with yourself. And you have to be consistent with yourself to follow through on your own agreement that you do not check your phone until the time that you agreed on with your partner, right?
That's basically, if you're expecting consistency from someone else, you also need to be consistent too.
Correct. And that means really noticing and making friends with that fear, right? Because what you're speaking of is this abandonment, right? Feeling uncertain, not knowing how they feel, and needing this reassurance. Are you able to then give yourself that reassurance? Like, it makes sense that I'm really scared. It makes sense, right? You take your hand, you put it on your heart, and you really soothe this painful feeling. And you go, I'm willing to have my abandonment if it means that I'm going to behave more securely in relationships. I'm willing to soothe and take care of the pain and the urgency that comes with my abandonment schema, right? And do the behaviors. And I would say that often the behaviors that are really important are to make requests from your partner that they are a collaborative participant in helping you feel safe in the relationship.
So Abby, there's a lot of questions in the chat about like, okay, like Janice's example was a couple months in, but what about when you first start dating? Is it too aggressive to say like, I like it when you call, or would you be willing to call every night or whatever? Like, are there other, how would you, I guess, answer that question? Is it too aggressive or are there other ways?
I am a firm believer. I'm very behavioral, and I do a lot of work with couples and people who are dating. So I'm a very firm believer that there's always a behavior that we could do. There's a behavior that comes from 0 to 100, right? So if 100 is something like, I'm really afraid. Do you really like me? I don't know what's going on. I need a wedding ring. If that's like 100 and you don't feel like you could do that, you could do that at a 5%. You could say something like, I'd really like it if I heard from you this week, or I'd really like to see you again, right?
Okay.
The more that you see that the other person is being consistent with those values, then you see, oh, look, I said I would like this and they did that. The more that you build that trust and you see that they are consistent with those values, the more vulnerable you could be, right? Does that make sense? You bring it higher and higher and higher. But the goal is always to share your underlying needs. That would be a whole other talk, right? About our underlying needs. I need consistency. Would you be willing to do this? Right? And really being able to articulate what is the specific request that we need that would meet the underlying need.
Yeah, I love this though from this, like looking at schemas and the fears that it brings out, like especially the anxiety that I feel like kept coming up over and over in the chat. Like that really does indicate a need for consistency. And it's like, how can I bring that also if I want that in return, essentially?
Right. And what's really important to remember is that, again, when we think about whether our partner is a good compatible partner for us, it's not because they're making us feel a certain way. It's because we look at their list of values and they're behaving a certain way. Meaning my partner could be consistent, reliable, honest, all of this, and I could still feel this anxiety and this urge to reach out and this need for reassurance. But if I see that they're behaving consistently, then I have to remembering that the thoughts and the feelings and the experiences that come up with our schemas are unavoidable. They are always there. So when I was doing this little exercise, what I want people to remember here is that these feelings that you have of the anxiety, do they like me? Do they not like me? Like this will show up in all of your relationships. Like we could do a behavior, we could distance a little bit, and then those thoughts and feelings are a little bit further away from us, but we've never, ever managed to remove this completely out of our lives, right? We'll never be able to not have fear. We'll never be able to not have deprivation in relationships. We'll never be able to not, have rejection, disappointment, abandonment. All of the pain that comes with relationships is going to show up. Now, would you be willing, since it's already here and it's with you and you bring it with you to all of your relationships, would you be willing to kind of bring it with you, right? And still with the pain, still move towards what matters. You bring the behaviors closer and you bring the feelings closer. And, the work around doing new behaviors is a little bit longer, but a lot of it has to do with learning to self-soothe and self-validate our own experiences, our own thoughts and our own feelings without pushing them away, right? Just like a crying baby. If there's a baby and it's crying, I don't go, why are you crying? Why are you anxious? Stop being anxious. Get away from me. You're so, right? I bring that baby closer. I go, you're really scared in this relationship. What do you need? And this feels really urgent right now. And this is really painful. And we bring all of our schema thoughts and feelings closer. We hold them with lovingness and kindness. And we just notice that the choice to do a certain behavior is 100% in our control always. If we're anxious at a 90% or a 10%, the choice of doing a behavior is the same always. We don't have control over the response. We only have control over us being the kind of partner we want to be. When we're closer to the kind of partner we want to be, we're getting closer to having the kind of relationship we want.
Can I share something I did after talking to you? I'll go really quick. But,
yes.
So I was feeling this anxious feeling because like texting kind of like started to like peter out a bit with someone I've been recently talking to. So instead of just feeling anxious, I approached it head on and kind of said like, hey, like I really like you, but I'm looking for like consistency in a relationship. Like, you know, and like I'm not necessarily interested in a relationship that makes me feel anxious. And I feel like I was met
Wow.
by such compassion. Like I never meant to like feel
Oh,
that way. Like, I'm so sorry. Like all this stuff, like there's just other stuff going on in my life. Like there was like so much compassion there. And I think ultimately whatever happens with it, I felt better because I felt in the driver's seat of my love life. And I felt like, hey, I want a relationship where I can share this stuff. I want a relationship where I can be vulnerable and someone can do the same back. So even if this person doesn't work out, like I felt like I'm moving in the right direction. I think, thank you for that.
I'm so happy to hear that, because I remember when we did this thing with you, one of the things that you do is kind of like not express those kinds of affectionate things and kind of let it be distant, kind of, right? I do the same. So it's really great that you were able to like move towards and say something vulnerable like that. And then, you know, what's really, you know, every time I tell people, when you do a new behavior and you take this risk to move towards your values, the next thing you're watching for, the next thing is not a reflection of you. It's information about the other person.
Yes.
The next thing that happens after you move towards the kind of partner that you want to be is information about how they are. It doesn't mean you're bad, you're wrong, you did something wrong. It means that this person is either a willing participant or they're not a willing participant.
Right.
You know, like I would have met what you said with compassion, and so did that person. So if you're being vulnerable and that person is not meeting you with compassion, just put a 10 on their, you know, on their number, and do not own that. That is not your responsibility. Do not take on something that's nothing to do with you. You know?
You could say I was a 10. So
that's correct. You just go, you rate yourself and you give yourself a
Exactly.
smiley face, and their response and their behavior is out of your control. It just gives you information about whether this is the kind of partner you want or maybe not.
Right.
And
there's
isn't
no
that
way-
just liberating to know that dating is all about gathering information instead of trying to win someone's affections and trying to win this game of love? We're just gathering information about other people and about ourselves.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Ultimately, the only behavior you can control is your own. And that's what we've learned here. But if you're not putting it out, how can you expect someone to meet you? Essentially, is what we learned.
The further away you are from your values, or the more that you do the regular coping behaviors, your natural urges of what you tend to do when you're triggered, you create a self-fulfilling prophecy. The very belief that you have, you make come true. It doesn't mean that it was true. It never was true. You just created it, but it doesn't mean that it's true.
Awesome.
Everybody needs to go take all this in, because the times we've talked about schemas with Abby, I've just probably spent 2 or 3 hours after digesting, decompressing, sharing with my friends, Googling more stuff, retaking the quiz. So I think there's a lot of work to be done for everyone, but this is really good work for you to know, and really empowering knowledge for you all to have in your toolbox. I also like, there's some revelations that even in this conversation, even though we've talked about this so much now, this idea, like personally for me, this idea of being indecisive has always been a huge problem for me. And now I realize that the indecisiveness comes from my perfectionism, but then my perfectionism judges my indecisiveness.
Right.
Vicious cycle. So I'm like, why are you so indecisive? But I can't make a decision. But now, knowing when you have values and you can define your values, it gives you a North Star. So it's for you to make those decisions against. So to me, that was my major aha moment tonight.
I love that you brought this up, UA, because, you know, it's like, if you're thinking about it, if you have a perfectionism schema, did I lose you guys?
No,
you're still here.
if you have a perfectionism schema, you're always thinking, am I making the right decision or the wrong decision? The right decision or the wrong decision? And then you judge yourself about the decision.
Yes.
But this way you could judge yourself, was I decisive or was I not decisive? Did I take action, right? Was I consistent? Was I persistent? And if you were persistent and consistent and all that, even if you made the wrong decision, you were still right. because you do not have control over making the right decision. We're not psychic, right? We can't do things right. We can only do the best informed thing that we know. But if we're moving towards our values, we know that we have moved closer to the kind of person that we want to be, and that we did the only thing that is in our control: to be decisive, to be persistent, to be consistent, to take action. So I love that you brought that up.
I think that's a mic drop right there. But thank you so much, Abby. We're going to put up quickly just one last slide of where you could get in touch with Abby. We'll send this out to, like Yue said, I feel like sometimes you have to digest this stuff a couple of times. So we will be posting this recording in the sounding board in Patreon. So feel free to rewatch it, pause, take your time writing out all the values, like doing the exercise another time. Like I know personally I'm going to do that because sometimes you need to like take it in a couple times. So thanks again. This has been
Thank
so
you guys.
And
wonderful.
Abby,
Yes.
Swanee asked earlier if we can get a copy of the handouts that you had. Are those available on your website?
Yes, those will be available on the website pretty soon. They will be right there. They are available in all of my books. I'm getting them all. I'm very technologically challenged, but they will be on the website pretty soon. But they are in all my books. And I also have this webinar that I did on narcissism and schemas. And so if anybody's,
that one.
Yes, people love narcissism. I mean, especially because we had a president that was one. So it's close to our hearts right now.
Well, let's wrap up. We want to give Yue a big happy birthday before we exit out. So if everyone wants to unmute quickly and just yell out happy birthday or any little wish. Happy birthday! Make everyone sing.
I appreciate you all.
But we will make you sing Stay Dateable. So we'll do that together as a wrap up, a real wrap up.
And then just, our next, we love these events. We do them once a month. Our next event is the big Most Dateable 2021 competition, where we will have 6 members from our community competing for the crown of Most Dateable. It is our version of a co-ed pageant per se. There will be a talent competition. There will be Q&A. It's going to be a lot of fun. So we're very much looking forward to that. We're going to start planning for that event like tonight.
Yep.
So,
and everyone that's in this level that's here today, that's included. That will be the February event. So no need to do anything else. You are automatically on.
Sweet. We're going to wrap this up. Thank you all so much. We're so grateful for this community. So grateful for Abby, and go and digest this information, drink a glass of wine, and share any more aha moments you have with us.
Yes.
Okay. On the count of 3, we're all going to say, stay dateable together. Here we go. 1, 2, 3.
Stay dateable. Wow, that was the best harmony yet. Awesome.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Have a great night. It's like
They're streaming out. Should we stay on or get off? Oh, they're all leaving soon. Okay.
Oh,
you
Ryan.
actually- you
Ryan,
ate
I never
Kit
got to Ryan. Thank you.
Oh.
You're right.
I had to run to the bathroom and all of these things on the break, and I didn't get to. I hope that you got to come up with some like a specific behavior. We never got to.